If you are a street photographer, a vlogger, or just someone who wants to take photographs or videos in public, then here are 10 key facts about public photography you need to be familiar with. But first of all, if you're new to me and you've got legal questions of your own, hit subscribe because I'm a barrister who helps you understand law. So just to be clear, while the law is broadly the same throughout the United Kingdom, it's not exactly the same, so I'm talking about the law in England and Wales. So let's go with 10 key facts about public photography. The number one overarching fact is that the UK law does not prevent or prohibit you from taking photographs or videos in a public place, save for some exceptions. For example, certain bylaws, which I'll link below, prohibit professional photography in places like London's Trafalgar Square and Parliament Square, as well as royal parks. So save for those exceptions, you are free to take photographs and videos in a public place, with the obvious caveat that they should not be of an obscene nature. You should also be careful of taking videos or photographs from a public place into a private place. For example, using a zoom lens into somebody's bathroom is going to be a breach of their privacy, which brings us on to fact number 2, which is that there is no presumption of privacy for individuals in a public place. But again, with the caveat that there will be narrow exceptions where there is a reasonable expectation of privacy. Let's say there's a specific incident that somebody just cannot avoid and they should have a reasonable expectation of privacy and just happen to be in a public place. I would exercise caution in going along and filming it. You can use your imagination to decide what I mean. Fact number 3 is that no one can require you to delete the photographs or the videos that you've taken. However much they might object and however much they might dislike any photographs or videos that you've taken, if you are taking photographs and videos in a public place, no one, neither the public nor the police, can require you to delete that material. Fact number 4 is that nobody has the right to view your photographs or videos either, save for the exception where you're being detained for the purposes of a search, which I discuss in another video, which I will link below. Fact number 5 is that no one has the right to require a copy of the photograph or the video, save again for the same caveat if you're being detained and material is being seized for the same purpose. Again, see my video linked below. There is also the discussion about GDPR, which I will come back to in another fact. Fact number 6 is about photography in shopping centres, and the fact is that shopping centres are private property and they can and very often do have their own rules and often prohibitions about photography and videography inside the shopping mall. Now, depending on how you are taking the photographs and the videos inside the shopping centre, this might not be a problem. But if you are asked to stop and to leave by the security guard, then that shopping centre will become a private premises to you. You will become a trespasser and asked to leave. If you refuse to leave, they can use reasonable force to remove you, but they cannot seize your camera equipment and they cannot search you and they cannot view the material, as I've said in the other facts. It's also worth bearing in mind that various parks and libraries and supermarkets will have their own rules, usually restricting photography as well. So expect to be asked to stop if you're walking around there and filming as well. Fact number 7 is about your personal details. It's a favourite thing for members of the public, security guards, and even police to ask you to identify yourself as a photographer, provide your details, your name, sometimes even more details than that. However, the fact is you are not required to provide any of these details unless you are being detained and arrested by the police. Fact number 8 is that taking someone's photograph or video of that person could amount to harassment, which in and of itself is an offence. But it's not that simple. You see, harassment is defined as a course of conduct on at least 2 occasions where the person knew or ought to have known that it amounted to harassment of the other. And this is set out in Section 1 of the Protection of Harassment Act 1997. But the section that is of particular relevance to street photographers is Section 1(3)(c, which provides as follows. Subsection 1, which is the definition of harassment, does not apply to a course of conduct if the person who pursued it shows that in the particular circumstances, the pursuit of the course of conduct was reasonable. So in the average case of a street photographer, vlogger, filmmaker, what have you, in a public place taking photographs or film, provided that the way this is being done is reasonable, then this cannot amount to harassment because there's a specific defence available in the Act. Only if there was a course of conduct on at least 2 occasions, both of which were shown not to be reasonable and done with the intention where the person knew or ought to have known that it was going to amount to harassment of that other person, then there would be a case to be made out for harassment. Just a final word on harassment. As I said, the law is not the same throughout the United Kingdom. So in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, harassment is a criminal offence which attracts up to 6 months in prison or a fine or both. Whereas in Scotland, surprisingly enough, harassment in itself is not a criminal offence, although someone can apply for a non-harassment order, and breach of that order would amount to an offence. Fact number 9 builds on my discussion on searches under the Terrorism Act in my previous video, in particular with respect to the filming of police stations and other buildings of national importance. And this is that it can amount to an offence to publish or communicate information about members of the armed forces, intelligence services, or police, where the information is, by its nature, designed to provide practical assistance to a person committing or preparing an act of terrorism. However, it has been said that it would ordinarily be unlawful to use Section 58A to arrest people photographing police officers in their ordinary policing duties, without some real grounds for suspecting that the photographs or film are being taken to provide assistance to a terrorist. And fact number 10 is that you can find yourself in breach of GDPR, data protection regulations, by publishing photographs on social media. But again, in my view, this is a narrow scenario, and I'll explain. You see, there's an exception in GDPR, what we call the household exception, where if something is entirely for personal or household use, this is exempt under GDPR. However, only last year in 2020, a grandmother was ordered to remove photographs of children from Facebook, else face a fine. But looking at GDPR from a photographer's perspective, there are what we call special purposes, for which there are exemptions under Article 85(2) for the reasons of the freedom of expression and information. And those special purposes are set out as follows. This could be for the purposes of journalism, academic purposes, artistic purposes, and literary purposes. So again, I suggest that you do have to give special attention to what photographs you're using, what circumstances you are using them, how and why you are using them. If it's for one of the purposes that comes under one of these special purposes, then it's likely that it's going to attract freedom of expression and information. So I've no doubt there's going to be a continuing debate on who can photograph what, when, where, why, and how, but ultimately the scenarios where photography is going to be outright wrong should be fairly obvious, and in my view, the vast majority of photography and videography in public places is going to be okay. But as always, if you're going to photograph or film something in a public place that has the possibility of getting you into trouble, seek out legal advice first, and at least you will feel safer that you've had a professional view. I hope you enjoyed those 10 facts. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my stories over on Black Belt Secrets. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.